how do we solve the problem of evil? Everybody's dealing with it. There's all this terrible stuff happening all over the planet all the time. Every day there's bad stuff happening. You've had bad stuff happen to you. You've probably done bad stuff, hopefully not a ton, but you probably have done stuff that was evil to other people or yourself. In the beginning of the Bible, there's this tree in the Garden of Eden, which means pleasure. Eden means pleasure. So in this beautiful garden where God designed us to live a life of pleasure, there's this tree that he says, this is the only thing don't do. Don't eat from that thing, because it will kill you. That's what God says. The evil one, whoever that was, whether it was Satan or whatever, it's not really identified, whoever this crappy serpent is in the garden, says, God doesn't want you to eat from that, because then you will know good and evil, and you will be like God. Well, throughout the rest of the scripture, we find out we already were like God. We're not supposed to do this one thing. And the problem is, when we ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, then what it did is we became the judge of everyone and everything else. We became judge, and we acted like we have judgment over everybody else. Problem is, we are not very loving, we're not very kind, we don't have all the information, all the data to make a decent judgment on. So every one of our judgments is skewed, flawed, and inadequate. Here's an interesting concept that came to me yesterday and last night after rewatching The Shack and having a snot fest cry through the movie, going, oh my God, there's so much fabulous theology here about who God is that I had missed my whole life when I was on the judgment, Calvinistic USA version of churchianity and Christianity that is pretty brutal and in a lot of ways very mean. How do you know when something's evil? How do you know when something's good? So after listening to this and thinking about, when somebody does bad, they do murder, rape, killing, wars, theft, stealing things, destroying other people, doing terrible stuff, that's evil. To do good is to love people, to do what's best for them. And the interesting thing that I came to a conclusion last night is there's not really an end point for this. Like, it just can keep going. You can just keep doing good stuff to the max, to the maximum. Like, there's not a limit, there's not a limiter on good. But in your life, how many bad things have happened? How much evil has happened? In my life, as I was thinking about this, if this is kind of the neutral point, here's how much evil and bad has happened in my life. Very little. I've experienced death, I've experienced betrayal and deception and a little bit of abuse, but not very much compared to a lot of people. And there's a lot of people who are out here who have received a lot of atrocities, been abused a lot, and then maybe they became an abuser and they did all kinds of evil, terrible things. And it can get to a certain point where, like, I think this is as far as the worst person in the history of Earth has ever gotten, where they received the most evil done to them and they did the most evil to anybody else. Hear me out on this. If all 8 billion people on the planet, if we say, what's the absolute worst? I'm thinking, if all 8 billion people on the planet are being sexually abused every day, they're being beaten, they're being threatened with their life, they're afraid they're going to get killed and murdered, they're being treated horribly, everybody around them is having all of that happen to them too. All 8 billion people, that is happening to all 8 billion every day. And then they're doing that to the other 8 billion. Everybody is doing the very utmost. It makes every horror movie and every purge movie on the planet look like nothing. Like, if we're all doing this atrocious evil, you would think that maybe that's the maximum of evil. I'm saying there's a limit. God has stopped it. We all in our minds go, God, why didn't you stop this? Why did this bad thing happen to me? Why did that bad thing happen? Why is this terrible stuff happening? What if God stops it and says, that's enough? That's enough. Yes, this is terrible and atrocious, horrible, but that is as far as I'm gonna let it go. And then there's, I would say this is even a bigger gap. Like, we don't know the distance between what's real and what's the absolute worst. We don't know where that is because it's so bad and so horrible. So this limit that God puts on what is allowed, because we have dominion and we choose to do evil to ourselves and to others. We are the perpetrators of evil. God says, that's it. You can't be any more evil than that. That's enough. But you can be absolutely good, absolutely loving, kind, patient, faithful, merciful, gentle, having self-control. There's no limit to this. God will allow this. But we focus on that. That's like all we think about. We're so stuck because we ate from this fruit. We're so focused on what's evil and who's doing evil that even little old me, who's had almost nothing terrible happen in my life, but I've had some junk, I'm still focused on this instead of all this glorious goodness and love and beauty. We're looking at the wrong stuff because we make ourselves judge. That's why God tells us to pursue love instead of judgment. What do you think?